Have you ever been, like, absolutely furious with someone? Maybe rightfully so, even.
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there.
Right. But then a specific shared language, or maybe just the cadence of their voice, completely melts your anger. It just evaporates.
Yeah, like you're standing there ready for a fight. You have all your bullet points mentally prepared.
Exactly. You've got the whole spreadsheet of grievances ready to go, but then they just shift the rhythm of the interaction and the tension just breaks.
It is arguably one of the most mysterious phenomena in human relationships, honestly.
It really is. And today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that kind of emotional alchemy. We're looking at an August 2023 poem by Mukund Bhalerao.
Right. It's titled Me at Cambridge and Mermaid on Thames.
Yeah, but we aren't just doing traditional literary analysis here. We want to look at the actual, like, physiological mechanics of how a fight ends.
Because we tend to view conflict as this highly logical arena, right?
Yeah.
We want to negotiate our grievances point by point.
Totally. We want to know exactly why the other person was wrong.
Yeah, but this narrative reveals that often true resolution has absolutely nothing to do with logic.
Wait, really? Nothing at all.
Well, I mean, it's physiological, it's environmental, and it's entirely dependent on finding a shared emotional wavelength.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the source material we are diving into today captures that exact shift perfectly.
It really does. It's a brilliant example.
So we're going to analyze the narrative as a literal 3-act dramatic play, focusing deeply on Mary's emotional journey. We want to see how she moves from resentment to profound serenity.
Which requires us to pay very close attention to the mechanics of their interaction. This text is essentially a masterclass.
A masterclass in what specifically?
In how rhythmic verse, physical intimacy, and the surrounding environment, specifically the River Thames, in this case, all interact to resolve interpersonal conflict.
Okay, so the environment actually plays a role in the apology.
Exactly. It demonstrates that unspoken romantic tensions are rarely bridged by simple apologies. They require an alchemy of setting, timing, and shared resonance.
I love that. So let's establish where we are for Act Y. Imagine you are standing right there on the banks of the Thames. The imagery the narrator gives us is incredibly vivid. There's this, well, he calls it a naughty wind blowing.
Right, swaying her scarf in a haughty way.
Yeah. And boats are roving by. You've got these high masts, gentlemen casually watching the scene. It's this bustling, dynamic, almost chaotic public environment.
It's very picturesque, but also very busy.
But right in the middle of this postcard scene, Mary is completely isolated. She is engrossed in, as the poem says, dreamy thoughts.
If we adopt a literary analyst perspective here and look at Mary's internal state, the contrast is just striking.
Between her and the river.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The stark contrast between that vibrant external world and her private romantic tension. You have all this nautical chaos around them, yet her internal state is turbulent for entirely different reasons.
Wow. Yeah, because she's actually really upset with him.
She is, though she has glowing blushes when she senses the narrator's arrival, so the affection is clearly still alive.
Right, she's blushing, but she's actively nursing residual anger.
The poem notes she tilted her face away a bit.
She is physically present, but emotionally she is building a fortress.
That's a great way to put it. She's putting up walls.
And there's a very specific history driving that defense mechanism. The backstory we get is that they had this amazing rendezvous previously at a Cambridge cafeteria.
Oh, the Cambridge scene.
Yeah. The narrator talks about sipping her elixir eyes, which is just, I mean, what a phenomenal phrase.
It really is. Getting completely lost in someone's gaze like that. It implies something intoxicating and life-giving.
Naturally, Merritt was super keen to meet up again immediately after their exams, but the narrator bailed.
He did. He couldn't make it.
Right, due to a back-home fervor.
That phrase, back-home fervor, feels intentionally vague, doesn't it?
It totally does. Like, what does that even mean?
When you are leaving someone hanging after a deeply intimate date, citing a general eagerness to go home is the classic setup for relationship anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. She was vulnerable, she signaled her desire to see him, and he wasn't there to catch her.
It's the ultimate letdown. You're riding the high of this perfect Cambridge connection, and then nothing.
So now, standing by the Thames, we are witnessing Mary from a place of deep defensive withdrawal.
And the narrator recognizes this tension. He knows he messed up.
He does. He tries to fix it. He gathers his courage to make what he calls a feeble try. He reaches out and touches her shoulder.
But the text explicitly tells us her hurt did not dry.
Yeah, that touch just fails completely.
The failure of that touch is actually one of the most critical psychological moments in the narrative.
Why is that? I mean, shouldn't a hug or a touch make things better?
We often assume that physical contact is a universal comfort, but touch in isolation, without an underlying emotional connection being reestablished first, can actually feel jarring.
Oh, I see.
When someone's nervous system is essentially in a fight-or-flight state of resentment, a simple pat on the shoulder feels like a minimization of their pain.
I look at that moment like trying to defuse a complex bomb by just snipping a random wire and hoping for the best.
Exactly. You can't just guess.
Simple physical touch isn't enough because the emotional bridge hasn't been built yet. You can't just pat someone on the shoulder and expect feelings of neglect to instantly vanish.
The groundwork for safety hasn't been laid, and that physical rejection is perfectly mirrored by the environment, too.
Right, we have to connect the Thames weather to their shifting internal states.
Think about that naughty wind swaying the haughty scarf.
Mm-hmm.
The physical environment is directly reflecting the unspoken romantic turbulence between them.
It's like a classic nature motif capturing relationship anxiety.
Exactly. The weather is unsettled, the boats are roving, the wind is erratic.
And Mary's internal state is equally turbulent and defensive.
Precisely. So that's Act 1. The tension is palpable.
So moving into Act 2, if a physical touch on the shoulder fails completely because the emotional bridge isn't there yet, how do they actually build that bridge?
Well, Mary actually gives him the answer. She tells him exactly what she needs.
She does. She's perplexed, she's agitated, and she demands to know why he hasn't recited poetry for her.
She says poetry was her weakness. And her love, too.
Yeah, she holds his arm, her voice is damp, and she urges him to take her to the woods where the meadows are supine.
Notice the environmental shift she's craving here.
She wants to get away from the river.
Right. She wants to escape the bustling, chaotic, unpredictable Thames and find a place of emotional safety in the supine meadows.
Supine meaning like lying on your back.
Yeah, it suggests resting, being vulnerable. She is explicitly asking for a shared emotional language to help her transition from this state of agitation to a state of rest.
Because she intuitively knows that a normal, logical conversation isn't going to bridge this gap.
Exactly. A bullet point apology won't work. She needs the language of their connection.
So Mukund begins reciting a mystic sonnet. And the sensory shift that follows in the text is immediate and profound.
It really is an instant change.
She leans on his shoulder. Her eyes are moist, but her inner state is described as a smolder. And then she falls into this shivering, poetic trance. But let's pause here and really look at the mechanics of this.
Okay, let's look at it.
I'm going to push back a bit. Is a sonnet just the act of reciting pretty words actually fixing the root problem here? Or is this just a highly effective romantic distraction technique?
I get why you'd ask that, but it is definitely not a distraction. It is the mechanism for the resolution itself.
How so?
To understand why, we have to evaluate how sonnets specifically resolve her romantic anxieties. It's not just about beautiful vocabulary, it's entirely about rhythm.
Oh, interesting.
When you recite poetry, especially a sonnet which traditionally has a very strict, predictable meter, you are introducing a steady heartbeat into a chaotic emotional space.
Wow, that makes so much sense. If she is internally hyperventilating with anxiety over the relationship, the strict meter of a sonnet acts almost like a metronome for her nervous system.
Precisely. That is the underlying mechanism at play, is giving her a physiological cue that it is safe to slow down.
So the rhythmic verse acts as a literal bridge for their unspoken tensions.
Yes. The poem tells us she had rhythmic silent sobs, and that her warm breaths were resonating with her qualms.
So her breathing is syncing up with the poem.
Exactly. The cadence of the sonnet is syncing up with her breathing, with her sobbing. His recitation is pacing her physical distress.
That's incredible. Mukund's sonnet rhythm mirrors her heart.
And by doing so, it validates her internal turmoil rather than dismissing it. It provides a safe, structured container for her to process that smolder.
If we try to imagine this narrative solely from Mary's internal perspective, she has been holding her breath, emotionally speaking, ever since that missed connection after Cambrige.
She's been tense, guarding herself constantly.
Right, and he couldn't just say, hey, I'm sorry I missed the date. A traditional cliché romantic declaration just wouldn't have worked.
No, it would have felt cheap. They needed this active shared emotional release where her erratic breathing could find a steady rhythm in his voice.
Look at how the role of touch transforms once that rhythm is established, too.
Oh, this is a crucial shift.
Earlier, the touch on the shoulder was completely rejected. But now, as she is weeping in this shivering, poetic trance, The narrator pats her back.
And this time, it works. The text specifies it is for calming her in mind, to help disperse her incessant sobbing.
The physical touch signals genuine reconciliation now, but only because it is paired with the rhythmic intimacy of the verse.
Intimacy and the rhythmic structure are working in tandem to resolve the interpersonal conflict.
It's like the verse does the heavy lifting of aligning their emotional states.
Exactly, which then allows the physical touch to actually be received as comforting rather than jarring.
The poetry recital takes all that residual anger that smolder and transforms it into profound, calm acceptance.
Which brings us perfectly into Act 3, the climax of her vulnerability.
All right, Act 3. We've moved through the defensive tension, we've experienced the shared catharsis of the sonnet, and now Mary drops the final remnants of that haughty defense.
As the poem finishes, her voice is trembling. She clasps him and says, "Please be with me. Let me come in you."
It is an incredibly raw plea for complete emotional and spiritual closeness.
It's a total surrender of the ego. She isn't asking for an explanation of his back-home fervor anymore.
No, the need for logical explanations is gone. She is asking for integration.
And the resolution follows beautifully. They entwine and they walk along the Thames.
And the text describes them as loving like levee. I love that imagery so much.
Loving like levee. It's brilliant.
They've essentially become each other's flood walls against the turbulent currents of the world.
The use of the levee metaphor perfectly encapsulates their new dynamic. A levee provides safety and boundaries against unpredictable waters.
Right. Their love is no longer something easily tossed around by a naughty wind. It has structural integrity now.
And this is where we see the narrative brilliantly use the Thames environment to reflect their achieved peace.
The scenery changes with them.
Exactly. The river scenery isn't just a passive backdrop. It is an active participant in their emotional journey.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think back to the very beginning. We had the unsettled river, the nautical chaos, the errant weather.
A lot of turbulence.
Yeah. But now, look at how the scenery transitions alongside Mary's internal state. The dust is suddenly described as divine.
They are melodious. Colors are flying.
We have to talk about the symbolism of this sunset, because the poem paints this gorgeous final image. The sun is slanting, there are lingering reddish rays.
And Mary's face is glowing with evening golden rays.
The color shift is inextricably linked to their newfound peace, isn't it?
It absolutely is. We've moved from her face glowing with the heat of hidden anger, those defensive blushes at the start, to her face glowing with the literal and metaphorical golden light of dusk.
Wow, from the heat of anger to the warmth of dusk.
Right. The golden rays symbolize the aftermath of an emotional storm. The turbulent weather of their misunderstanding has completely passed.
Leaving this warm, lingering afterglow, our deep dive really frames these evening golden rays as the ultimate symbol of her internal peace.
It's the visual representation of that smolder finally burning out.
And leaving something warm and sustaining in its place.
And beyond the specific literary beauty of the Thames at dusk, what is truly compelling is how this deeply specific moment mirrors a much larger, universal human longing.
A universal longing. Tell me more about that.
Well, this journey from resentment to harmony, two lovers walking by a river after a poetry recitation, it's something every person navigating a relationship has to master in their own way.
So what does this all mean for the rest of us? I mean, most of us aren't getting mystic sonnets recited to us on the banks of a river in England when we're mad at our partners.
Right. We don't all have a personal poet.
Yeah. So how do we take Mary's emotional journey and apply it to the reality of modern relationships?
It speaks directly to the universal desire to be fully understood and emotionally met, rather than just intellectually managed.
Intellectually managed. That's a great phrase.
Mary didn't need a logical, chronological breakdown of why he missed the post-exam date. That wouldn't have healed the rift.
It would have just been an excuse.
Exactly. She needed to know that their connection was still vibrant, still safe, and still capable of holding her vulnerability.
She needed the music of the relationship, not the manual.
That is a fantastic way to frame it. The structural role of the sonnet wasn't just to sound pretty, it was the vehicle for transitioning their mood.
It pulled her out of her isolation.
It allowed Mary to move from the isolation of her own dreamy thoughts and defensive posturing back into a shared reality.
The rhythm of the verse created the intimacy that a simple apology or a disconnected physical touch could not achieve on its own.
It proves that deepening romantic intimacy requires a willingness to find a shared wavelength.
Especially when the external environment or your own internal weather feels chaotic.
Analyzing the emotional journey of Mary in Mukund Bhalerao's poem matters because it demonstrates that true reconciliation is, fundamentally, an art form.
It really is an art. It requires an awareness of the entire ecosystem of the relationship.
You cannot separate the naughty wind from the anxiety, just as you cannot separate the golden rays from the healing.
So when we try to resolve conflicts in our own lives, we have to pay attention to the setting, the timing, the way we touch, and the emotional resonance of our words.
We have to ask ourselves, are we introducing a steady, calming rhythm into our partner's chaos, or are we just snipping random wires?
That's the real question. It takes a willingness to drop your defenses, to step into the vulnerability of a trembling voice, and to find a rhythm together that makes you feel safe enough to build that levee.
We saw how a literal sonnet provided the exact metronome needed to heal Mary's romantic anxiety.
Unlocking her defenses and melting that initial anger we talked about at the top of the show.
The poem leaves us with a blueprint for emotional alchemy. It's a powerful reminder that when logic fails, we have to look for the rhythm.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over. We've dissected how the strict meter of a poem bridged a seemingly impassable emotional gap on the banks of the Thames.
A literal bridge of words.
Yeah. But in your own life, when logic falls flat, when standard apologies feel empty, and when words just aren't enough to resolve a conflict, what is the unspoken poetry or shared rhythm you rely on to bring you back to serenity?